Dear international students of Lund University, welcome to this special talk show on Swedish Christmas tradition, especially on food. It's a special year and it's also something very special when it comes to Christmas. Then all Swedes that you have been seen eating sushi, tacos, Thai and all other exotic food stuff, all of a sudden, once a year, try to take back their roots into the Swedish food history. You will see them eating quite a few strange stuff on the Christmas dinner table. And I would like you to introduce you to some of them and see a little bit about the history behind them. My name is Håkan Jönsson. I'm an ethnologist at the Department of Arts and Cultural Sciences at Lund University, specialized in food culture and history. Christmas is the end of the working year in the old rural society. And we must remember that, because that is some of the foundations of what we actually eat, what we eat. Consider that we have a very cold climate. You must produce everything under 3 to 4 months, what will last for 12 months. And you have been working through the spring, you have been working through the summer, through the harvest in the autumn, you have the slaughter in November or early December, and now we have taken care of everything. And the cool days, both relaxing but also of course cooled, they start at Christmas. And then you have a few days off. Now is a time to celebrate that you have completed all your tasks, and once you can indulge before the very harsh winter months begin. So, when do the Christmas parties start? Well, traditionally, it starts somewhere around lunchtime. Remember that you have been fasting for a couple of weeks, so you are kind of hungry. And you feel the wonderful smells from outside the kitchen. And then you have the starting point. That is when you are allowed to go out into the kitchen and to dip in the pot, doppa I grytan. You take the bread, the newly baked bread with the exotic spices. You have a pot where you don't have any meat or so, but you have the stock from where you boiled all the meat. And you gather around it, take it, you eat it, perhaps with a little drink and not more. And then the Christmas starts. Quite honestly, it doesn't taste much. It's not that funny to have, but it's the ritual, right? And now everything started. So that's why elderly people in Sweden that talk about this dopp i grytan as something really nostalgic thing. That's when the Christmas thing started. You don't have to like it. It's just to show that the party starts, right? So, I hope you're hungry and it's time for the real Christmas dinner party. I have a couple of plates on my side just to symbolize that we will eat a lot. You will have 7 servings on a proper Christmas dinner table. We'll skip the first one. That's with a herring. And of course, you know the pickled herring, first salted and then put into the Swedish vinegar, the ättika, with a couple of spices and so forth. But that is actually, traditionally everyday food. That was the basic protein for the masses. For the Christmas, you could add a little bit extra spices and so on, but after all, it's not that typically Christmases used to be, but nowadays we eat it more or less only at the traditional festivities such as Christmas and Midsummer. But I think we can go directly to the remains of the autumn slaughter, and that was the thing that you were actually allowed to eat meat. You had not been eating meat for a couple of weeks, the long fast before Christmas, but now you have it. So we have the ribs. Christmas was one actually of the very rare moment when you actually ate fresh meat. You could eat salted meat if you were lucky once or twice a week, but fresh meat, that was something for Christmas. You also have the sausages, especially the ones with blood, the blood sausage, because blood will not last for that long, so you need to consume it while it's decently fresh. So I take a piece of that one. And then you have the more modern varieties that you will now find at any Swedish Christmas dinner table, the Prince sausage, the exclusive one. But it's actually a little bit much later, 20th century, but still you had the sausages. And another layer in time, when the Christmas dinner table become mixed up with the smorgasbord and the French buffet dinner. Then you got the Swedish meatballs that you are probably familiar with. Not so much traditional with it, although you had the minced, the chopped meat as part of it, so I put also one of this on my table. Just to see the overflow of meat once every year. Forget about the other 364 days, we didn't eat much meat traditionally, but on Christmas, yes. So that's why I think it's fair to indulge in meat once a year. For this, we will of course need a few drinks. It was actually back in pagan time, before anyone knew anything about the birth of Jesus Christ, you were celebrating Christmas using the same word that we do today, jul. And the first known source for the celebration, that was called Drinking Christmas, dricka jul. And what did you drink then? Well, traditionally, of course, you had a beer. And it was a special beer, it was stronger, it was darker, it was with more taste and also a little bit more alcohol. So something really robust to go with the food. So, after a couple of 100 years, the beer got a new best friend, the Aquavit. From the 17th century and onwards, the drinking of Aquavit has been one of the main traditions, and to some, of course, one of the main problems with the Swedish festive traditions. But anyway, the Aquavit is very often spiced, and you can take it with the beer for the food, especially for the herring and everything salted. Right? We call this to have a soup, and that sounds like soup, doesn't it? And it is. It's actually the same word. So if I would live back in the 18th or perhaps 19th century, I will actually drink it from this, like this. And then we would go it all the way around, sharing it with all the rest of you from the same. But in the 20th century, it became a little bit more boring. You needed to check exactly how many centiliters and so on in order to fulfill the restrictions. So now we just take it out of a small glass, and then it's called a schnapps. Of course, there should be non-alcoholic alternatives. And in the 1930s, during the restriction years, there was really a need for something to be festive but still without alcohol. So then some brewery created the julmust. And this is a sort of a sweet beverage with a little bit reminiscences of old Christmas beer, but without alcohol. And it's actually something that many people, not only children, actually appreciate a lot for the Christmas. During the last 100 years or so, one meat became more prestigious than anyone else on the Christmas dinner table. That's the big ham, the julskinka. We have it here. We actually have two varieties. That's also because it can be prepared in slightly different ways. You always first salt it, and in the southern regions where Lund is, you also have it lightly smoked. In the northern parts, no smoke, only salted. Right? Then you boil it for a long time, slowly simmering. Take it up and then finish it up with some nice mustard coating into the oven. And then you can have it standing there all day, and traditionally the father of the house should cut thick and nice pieces of the ham to serve to everyone. And that in turn you would consume with some cabbage. I don't have any cabbage with me here, but the cabbage was more or less the only vegetarian thing on a traditional Christmas dinner table. And you had different sorts of cabbage, wonderful, extra spicy. You had the red cabbage spiced with clove and nutmeg and allspice. And you had the green cabbage boiled for hours with a lot of thick cream. And in this very region we love the brown cabbage. That is actually white cabbage, but since it's fried with some lard and then with some vinegar and also boiled for hours and hours, perhaps with a little bit of the juice from the ham, then it turns totally brown, and it's beloved as the brown cabbage of Skåne. And we have all that with the Christmas ham. After a number of plates with the herring, with the meat, with the sausages, with the cabbage and so forth, you start to get a little bit stuffed, right? And then we take the special fish, the Lutefisk, in order to get a little bit cool down the stomach. The Lutefisk is quite similar to the bacalhau in Portuguese, dried salted fish, but then we put it in a kind of a heavy alkaline solution when we soak it in water, so it gets this sort of jelly-like texture. And it's actually quite good to get rid of all the acid in the stomach. So now we have sort of a temperate stomach. We are still full, but we are ready to dig into the final part of it, something for the sweet tooth. There will be a number of sweets and stuff, but I will highlight 2 or 3 of them here now. First, it's the porridge. And porridge, that was, I mean, nothing could be more traditional, everyday, mundane, boring than the porridge. But for Christmas, you had rice porridge, the imported rice, and spiced with the likewise imported cinnamon, and boiled in a thick milk. So you get this really nice white texture. Something for Christmas, a taste of the world outside. Not bad. And then of course you had the special pastries. The gingerbread cookies. It looks something like this. And here is basically any sort of, common thin pastry, but you take all the exotic spices you can find and put it into it, and a lot of sugar. And then you make sure that the dough is really, really thin, and you do it together. You have the entire family, and not least the children, they love to bake the gingerbread cookies. And when you've done that, and you have this wonderful smell in the kitchen that can last for a month almost with all the spices, you also make sure that you have a few of these saffron buns. Nowadays, mostly known as lussekatter. And why cats? Well, you can shape them as cats. And it's just like a lot of Christmas food is packed with exotic spices. And this was, one time in a year where you can really indulge yourself in all these imported luxury events. But there is also an even longer tradition on doing really nice and good looking bread for Christmas. You had it in piles in front of you. And every member of the rural household, they got their own pile of bread. And it sounds like something, okay, so that's what you get for Christmas, a pile of bread. But imagine, this was the only day of the year when you actually got an individual part of anything to eat that you could share with your friends and relatives that perhaps came walking from the other farms in the neighborhood. Otherwise, you always shared everything. You shared every meal. You made sure that it should be enough for everyone, so therefore you could not decide for yourself how much I should have today. But with a pile of bread, you actually got something for the individual consumption. Imagine that. That's what you have, I guess, all of you, every day now. But then it was only for Christmas. So take the pile of bread, treat it seriously. Take a nice bite of the saffron bun and put it in your mouth. And why not add and have a little bit of this punch, the really, really sweet liquor to go with almost any type of dessert. I wish you a very good Christmas. I hope you know a little bit more about the strange Swedish tradition. You don't have to like them, just embrace them. It's a part of our joint traditions, and we really, really would like you to be a part of that for many, many years to come. Merry Christmas from Lund University.